All right. So I guess we're calling this meeting to order, sort of,
Testing.
in as much order as we ever get. Yes, it's still raining outside. And we got to keep an eye on that in case water starts coming in, which it has done before. Okay, so tomorrow we hang the West Pecan Coffee Shop show. So for those of you who have pictures, that'd be all these people. Uh, be there about 3:15. They close at 4, so you can't be late. So make sure you get there. We'll hang the pictures, and I'll be done. I think
Everybody's got the word. Everybody's got the word. We sent out emails and you're all here.
Robert isn't.
This is except for, yeah, we have a guest tonight. This is Robert. He's,
Other Robert.
oh, the other Robert. There's Robert Fong.
Yeah, he's the one who's not here.
Okay. And did he contact you? Is he going to be there?
He hasn't contacted me, but
Okay.
we're crossing our fingers.
Okay. We had the library show got hung. You want to say something about that?
Yeah, so the library show is up. If you want to go to the Pflugerville Library and see all those pictures from so many of these people. Oh, Yeah.
Patrick just came in. Did you see anybody else out there? Okay.
Okay, so there's more people coming, but anyway, for you guys, the library show is up. It'll be there for a month. Feel free to go in and have a look.
There's 50 plus pictures.
No, it's 48, I think.
48. Okay.
I think.
So that's for reception.
I haven't heard anything about a reception.
The takedown is on Friday, June 12th, June 12th. Friday, June 12th is 2:30 to 5:30. The library closes at 6. We could have some refreshments there just to, kind of socialize.
Yeah.
It's sort of, if we ask people from outside to come, they might miss it because we'll be taking down the pictures.
Yeah.
So the best is to go by their board. Do you have a suggestion?
Did the first year for me at Dresser where we had like a 10-day before the closing where we invited some people. I think it would be nice.
Yes, the Jester Courthouse, they did have a venue, and they didn't allow that this time, which was a change.
Okay.
But we can get you a contact. Actually, there's a contact on our website for them under the Jester Show, and it will take you a month to get that up on your phone. But there is one, because for the Jester and for the Pflugerville Library, we have the information up there for who we contact.
Which
the library? Who's the contact?
Do you mean the librarian, or do you mean
the people we deal with for the hanging the show and stuff? Yeah.
Okay. Well, I asked her about unfortunately, they reserve all those rooms for classes and for activities. And so I asked her about, could we have a reception? She said, well, all the room they're reserved, except for the Friday, June 12th, when we do the takedown. So unfortunately, it doesn't look like we could reserve a place in that room because they have classes, children classes and things like that.
Could we do it early Friday?
We could say 2:30. Yeah. Yeah, we could say, if you can come 2:30, we'll have some soft drinks, chips.
Yeah, I'm on vacation, so.
Oh, you'll be away.
Yes.
That's true. Well, I'll bring some things. So we'll say 2:30, 3:00. I know you also have difficulty getting away from work, but we'll try. Anything else?
About we are not about the library. I have contacted Round Rock Arts and trying to get us on the schedule for Jester again next year, but I don't have a date yet.
Okay. I think it's really a great thing that people are participating. I really appreciate you guys for bringing your work out and putting it in the public. And so that way you get some exposure. Has anybody actually gotten people to call them or send them an email? Or you did? Oh, great. I see. Okay. Well, I do it just because it's fun to think that other people might look at it and say, and look, who is that? Who is that? Or what is that? Mary Day's abstract pictures. Well, I just want to recognize that we did have some renewals. I really appreciate Tim Levin and Leslie Chatham renewed and Evelyn Bunton renewed. So it's really great that we've got those are all members that have been in the club for some time, and we're glad that they're upping their membership for 2026. The membership can be renewed on our website through PayPal. That's the best way. And it doesn't take very long. And so we do have other new members, like, for example, Robert Fong was a new member just March. And so, really? Great.
Yeah. Judging for the competition will be for June, will be Robert Fong and me and Jill, who I don't think I know.
Jill, yeah.
Yeah. So we've already got 3, and Roger Edwards has already volunteered to be next.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes it's hard to get people to judge. You should judge. It's easy. All you have to do is look at photos and critique. And we're trying to get more and more people to participate by looking. Yeah, there's our speaker.
With a side order of rain.
Anyway.
Yeah, and one of the benefits of joining the club is to be in the monthly competition. You can submit one picture each contest. We have different themes. We have open themes. This coming June is an open theme. Tonight, or sorry, the last Thursday that we met was the critique for the patterns of nature. And then we have other themes coming up, like Golden Hour, I think is one of them coming up. Some others themes that we have. And I find that very helpful to, first of all, stimulate you to think of. Yeah, we can pause. Okay. Hi, everybody. Well, we're starting a little bit late because we had a terrific rainstorm happen outside, and our speaker was caught up in it. Ian Wann, he drove in from Georgetown, and he said it was raining and really tough to drive. So he's pulled in, he's drenched and wet, but he's managed to get himself here, and we've got him hooked up now to the screen so that we can do our presentation. I met Ian at the Georgetown Photography Festival. So we were just standing there with Bill Bunton, and people walk by, and we might hand him a business card or say hello to him. But Ian came along, and I could see right away that he was one of us because he had his big camera with his telephoto lens. And so we struck up a conversation, and it was so interesting and so fascinating to hear what he does with his photography that when we thought about tonight, which also is kind of a story for that one. People are traveling, and so Bill's not here, Gary Hook's not here. We've got a lot of people traveling and absent, so we needed a speaker desperately for tonight, and we are so glad that Ian is able to fill the bill for us. He readily agreed to come tonight, and I suggested, how about using your...
Yeah, I'm trying to get the mute button.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay, we'll
It's
get
my-
the sound worked out.
I thought I had it.
Should I step away? It doesn't matter. It's the computer sound.
It's the computer.
So where was I? Just that it was such an interesting conversation that I had with Ian about all the things that he's done with photography, that it just kind of that topic that we have tonight, using your photography for good, just seemed like a natural. And I'm so glad that Ian accepted our invitation to come and be with us, because we've been having some programs that are kind of technical. how to do your printing, how to set your exposures. So this is kind of a fun topic to think about. Well, we're doing all this work to take pictures. What do we use our photography for? And this is a really interesting one, using your photography for good. Let people know. Maybe it's not exactly photojournalism, is it, Ian? It's more.
It's a little bit photojournalism.
It's a little bit photojournalism, but it's also the social media, and people want to know about what you're doing and how do you get your word out about your nonprofit, your organization, so that they'll come and participate. So photography in all the aspects that we use it, moving images, Instagrams, Facebook, other specialty things, of course, on your website. That's how you reach out to the public and let them know that you're doing good in the world. What do we say, Ian? We
I
ready?
think we've got it. We may have a lack of echo, but that's
I will
okay.
stop talking and you can take over, and I think that'll work. Do you need someone to change slides?
No, I've got the slides.
Okay. So let me introduce tonight our speaker, Ian Wann.
All right. So I will talk a little bit about technical pieces of photography. If you want, feel free to ask questions. I can go down that as much as you want. I'm actually a tech guy in the tech industry. I use about every tool out there. I do videography. I do all kinds of AI stuff. I create my own apps. That's what I do for a living. I work for nonprofits for a living. I do this for fun. I do it for work. I do it pretty much all the time. And so the topic, though, here is all about the story and what the storyline is and what the plot is and how are we going to do that in our composition for our photos. And so there's certain things, especially if you're working online, which is a majority of my background is interactive. I've been working on the internet since days of it being text-based browsers. So before there was images on the internet. And, that's changed over time. Today, it's a lot of video, in fact, especially if you want the younger generation. Other people like stills. Most of my group and people, I usually have somebody doing video, somebody doing stills, maybe somebody doing both, because nonprofits, well, it's always low budget. So I kind of want to start and ask a simple question. How many of you believe that a single image can change and shape somebody's understanding on something? Okay, now keep your hands up if that image you actually think can change the world.
If it's a macro picture, does that count?
Sure. It could be a macro picture. Good examples, I would say, pictures of war over time have typically done that. There's lots of examples. I have worked with different communities all over the globe. And I can see my slides are not changing. Yeah, okay.
NASA's photo of the Earth from the moon.
Okay.
Moon, Earth rise.
Yeah, that definitely changed the world.
Even though it's, well,
Thinking of Penn State shooting.
It's another one. I was going for the positive version.
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Let's change it to a positive one.
How does it do that? So the mouse is on the,
What's happening?
is it here? You see it won't change even here. The mouse button changes it here, but not up there. Hold on, I thought I was in presenter mode. Yeah, I didn't.
Spanish Civil War. Robert Capa.
There, now it's changing. Okay. It somehow fell out of presenter mode. That's what happened. Okay. We're going to have every technical difficulty we can today. That's the way it works. So this first picture, by the way, this is from the side of the road in White River, South Africa, right outside of Kruger National Park. which is on the Mozambique-South African border. We'll talk more about there. It's a very fascinating place. You ever want to go on a safari? Lots of biologists, they all speak great English. Try to stay out of the Mozambican side. I spent most of my time trying to get to the Mozambican side. There's lots of animal reserves over there, lots of poachers over there. My sister lived over there at the time and was involved in rhino conservation. So black rhino conservation. And all kinds of, the amount of birds and fauna that border are incredible. But anyways, the people were is incredible. Very like Latin America and a lot of places in the world. This was a typical tienda. This was a typical store on the side of the road. You could buy almost anything you wanted. So continuing on our questions, I'm going to have to get used to this way. It went past it. See now, I guess I must click it.
It skipped an image.
It's not even going now. Weird. Okay.
If you
How can you do that?
with the computer, can you run the computer?
I'm just not going to touch anything but mouse arrows from now on. I won't even worry about it. And I won't worry about it changing there. I just won't have my notes. At that point, it doesn't matter. Okay. So these folks are in a community on the border of Mexico and Guatemala. It's actually on the Guatemalan side. They're native. They don't speak Spanish even hardly in this village. Totonicapan. All their dress, in fact, most of Mayan communities, you can literally tell where you are just by looking at their huipil, which is what these dresses are called. The men kind of get, they're not as cool. I mean, they have pants, but they're not nearly as elaborate. These things take like a month to make. And literally each group, each community, you can tell what town you're in based on them. These are folks that my family's known for like 30 years now. We've been going to the same small town. Really hard to do this without your notes. So what made those images communicate something to you? Can you think of an image that really drove that home for you? What was in that image? What was different about that image other than just a regular image that you quickly took?
Picture of a creek that's almost, a river that's almost dried up, where it's about 6 inches, maybe 6 inches deep, and you got a fish trying to swim up the river, and there's back fins and tail fins sticking up out of the water.
Is it on?
Yep.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking about Sebastian Salgao's, his photos of the men working in those horrible mines. And to see human beings about the scale of ants working in these conditions was just shocking to me. You can know something exists, but when you see it, especially on that scale, you just say, oh my God.
Right, a scale you're not used to, right?
Scale you're not used to.
Yeah, yeah.
Or humans are just ants in this machine. It was just horrifying, and you realize there are people that live in completely different ways. Even if we know here in the US we're very comfortable, to see how people live in a very different scale is just stunning.
Right, yeah, macro or like super macro. We've got a guy in our group, he literally, he does optic nerve. He literally puts cameras in optic nerve machines for optometrists. So you can only imagine what his photography looks like, because it's like blown up like a microscope. And so like we went out to take pictures of ladies in Round Rock that were stitching for the Swedish Christmas, and they literally, you could see every single stitch. Or in a butterfly, you could see all of the pigmentation cells inside of the butterflies. And so it immediately like told an entire story that you wouldn't know. In this case, this image actually comes from the opening of the Hope Community Garden down by the airport. Used to be on Baylor Street, down across the street from Whole Foods on Lamar. The reason this one caught my eye was because I'd been to 3 or 4 of these countries and I knew what the word meant. And I was like, that's kind of interesting. That wasn't what I was expecting to see today. So it stuck out. And so what Bono means is, in simple terms, being human by recognizing the humanity of others. And that is typically the story that I'm trying to show. And so, you know, here it's a simple image that you would see anywhere in the globe of football, soccer in the United States, obviously, you know, just on a wall. I can tell you pretty much it's definitely what was done by an artist from the area, because you look at the trees and there's ambient, and I can tell just from looking at the image. And sure enough, that's where the word is from Botswana, sometimes South Africa, in the southern part of Africa, Zimbabwe. And so it's pretty interesting that what you can tell just from an image, for me, those things always stick out, because those trees look very different than what we're used to in Texas. They would not survive the monsoon.
The actual meaning of the word?
Hmm?
What is the actual meaning of that word?
The meaning is being human by recognizing the humanity of others, would be almost a literal translation. I don't think we have a word that does that, but I think it's pretty cool. And I'm sure it comes from a bunch of tribal languages. I haven't researched that in a whole bunch, but when I saw this, I was like, oh, I remember that word. I remember seeing it. It's interesting what the lineage of words are, right? Because there's a lot behind that. And in tribal places, there'll be things unique, but it's kind of like Spanglish, right? It's like, and I would see the same thing in Guatemala. It would be like partially Quiche, partially Spanish, partially English. And I'm like, okay, this is pretty interesting. And so then they would have a word in one village that even if you went 25 miles down the road, they wouldn't have it. So it's interesting how that works. And I mean, it's a lot different in places that obviously don't have high-speed internet and always online, tribal communities mainly. So how would people define for the greater good?
Image didn't change.
Oh, right, because I changed it on here. So interesting. Okay. How would people describe that? What do you think? Because there's lots of different definitions for the greater good. Anyone?
The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few?
Yep. Georgetown Fire Department here. This is actually at the warming shelter in the middle of the ice storm that was open for 10 days. I was there for 3 nights of it.
I think that definition works until you're one of the few. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute. So it's not as easy as that. And sometimes it's the other way around. You know, we all come together to help that one person.
That's right.
So it's not easy to define.
Exactly. And that's why Andrew's hand over here. So the person here is a homeless person that lives on the streets of Georgetown and was actually inside the warming center at the time. And yeah, we really had a gas leak at the warming center in the middle. Of course, they decided to leave me in charge that day. That was probably a bad idea, but. So for me, this definition's kind of evolved throughout my life. I first remember thinking of these questions actually at like 3. And it was because like I didn't auditorily process things until I was a little older. And so like I remembered places like where I was. And so I became really, really observant of everything that's going on and everything around me. And so then I would remember what all those things are so that I could then retell the story. But of course, it's not true. It's from just my perspective. So what made it more interesting over time is I started looking at, well, okay, what would these other people's perspectives be? Especially because when I started doing this initially, I was traveling all over the world for my job. And so I wanted to understand what their customs were. I wanted to blend in. I wanted to go beyond just a tourist. And so my travel style was very, very different. Like I would go and be an archaeologist for a month. Or I would go and work there for quite a time period. Enough that you start to understand what people's stories are and what cultures that they're trying to gain. So like, for example, in Peru, it's not unusual to see a Chinese person. Why? Well, because they immigrated there. Same thing in other places. You can find Africans all over the globe and South America. And it's interesting what those migration patterns look like over time. And in fact, in South Africa, one of the most interesting customers I ever had, boringest thing, they were accountants. I mean, accountants are, if you're an accountant, I'm sorry. It's not really exciting, all the numbers. I'm a photographer and a storyteller. But the coolest thing was, what did they want to do? They wanted to take me out to the shipping container that was a Russian vodka bar where they only spoke Russian. And to me, that was really fascinating because here were people that traditionally didn't have the ability to explore this. This was actually not too long after apartheid stuff. So it was different. And you would go there and their story was totally different because their perspective was different. And what I mean by that was you would go to breakfast in the morning at the hotel and you would get, only you can change your life. Like here in the United States, you might get as a fortune cookie, they would stick it in there with your muffin. And that would get you to think in the morning before you went to the accountants. And you'd have to say, oh, hold on. How does this all really work? Maybe we need to go out for vodka again tonight. No, anyway. And so it's a different way of communicating because, they're worried about the power in the airport going out twice a day. And that's the one in Johannesburg. And that's Africa light, folks. I mean, compared to anywhere else in Africa. And so it's interesting what their perspective was. And so over time of working with people globally a lot, I've kind of processed that. So I can pick up the phone and I can say, oh, you're from Melbourne, you're from Sydney, you're from a different town, right? Just by the timbre of their voice. And then I can kind of say, okay, well, I'm going to talk to you differently based on that or based on how you're dressed or whatever, trying to communicate with them in their language instead of mine, even if we both speak English. And I've showed up to places where they spoke English and the first 10 words they said to me, I didn't even know them, even though they were English, because they used them differently. And so it comes down to what is their story? What have they lived through? Here, is it people that are trying to help others every day of the life and helping with the gas leak and helping through the ice? And I mean, by the end of this ice storm, it lasted so long, we had the police and the fire chief both delivering Walmart groceries to us because they were the only people out. Welcome to Texas. I'm a northerner from Missouri originally, so I was like, I'm just driving around. But that's because that's my story. Anyways, and Andrew, you know, he had a different story. He was terrified. I mean, this guy was to the point where he's honestly making bombs because we saw his friends in altercations with the police in Austin. And if he would have ever went back to Austin, it would have been a huge problem. And so we had special things that we did to accommodate him, to keep him in Georgetown and keep him up north and take him back to where his family was from, which was also north. And so, but if I hadn't talked to him enough to know that story, or if I would have just been scared by whatever the firecracker or whatever it was, which I don't to this day know if it really worked or not, that was in his shopping cart, I wouldn't have had that conversation. Now, I'm not saying everybody should go do that. Don't. In fact, I mean, so my father was a university psychologist. I started taking psychology classes at the university in 7th grade, and it's something I'm comfortable with, and something I'm also trained for. So to me, it was really interesting. And during the ice storm, I worked so much there, the nonprofit, I ended up joining the board of Helping Hands. Question?
Are you saying that you can use your photography to get to know people?
Absolutely.
Through that, and that's how you get to find out their perspective, and you're trying
Absolutely.
to
It can
you're
work
trying to
both
show your
ways.
photographs to capture
Yeah.
that. Mhm.
Now, there are people that don't want their picture taken. Don't go take pictures of the Mennonites, right? But like most people want their pictures taken. You should always ask, especially if it's a single father or any father with their children, they will be protective. Other than that, for the most part worldwide, most people are pretty open, except for certain Mennonites, Amish. There's a few groups. That's what I've found.
What does his tattoo say?
Hmm?
What does his tattoo say?
It's a gang symbol, basically. Yeah.
And it's a motorcycle.
It was just a pedal bike. Just a pedal bike. So anyways, I'll be honest, Andrew was a really nice guy after you got to meet him. But he wouldn't have been if you were even the Georgetown police waking him up on the street. We didn't really want him hanging around the library. So, you know, you have to figure out what works in the community for these things. You can't ignore them. If you ignore a problem, they'll get worse. And so, and it can't be some solution like we're just going to ship them here, there, or another, or we're going to ignore it. You also don't want to get a reputation for being the world's best place for the homeless, because then they will all show up. So there has to be a happy median between all these things. And so it's a much more complicated dynamic than you'd think.
Are you trying to get to the next picture?
The other thing I like to use with all these pictures is to raise money, right? So we were posting these things on social media in real time while the things happened. And so we ended up raising more money than this organization raised in the entire year previous in real time in 10 days by posting. And the church that it was at, which is actually, it's a community center, but it's a community center owned by a church. You know, they got recognition, Helping Hands got recognition, everybody ended up benefiting. In fact, police officers would say, they would drop somebody off that was freezing at 5 in the morning with the lights going off. And they're like, well, we found about you on social media. That's how we knew to bring them here. Of course, it was supposed to be on their, you know, the chief's radar, whatever their screens are, right? But half the time they would find it from social media instead of the official path. And so we found it as a win-win. So we were posting all the ways to groups. The same group, we do all kinds of education training and other things too. Any kind of disaster stuff. more about the photography of some of these things. So what got me all into all this as a child was kind of funny. Get this thing to switch. Okay, it did switch. And so I had a great aunt. She passed away, and for $1 at her estate sale, I bought 100 years of National Geographics, like think a truck and a half load full, that are still in my parents' storeroom, I think, and I'm 50. Anyways, almost. And anyways, so I looked at all these pictures from throughout time, and I was like, how am I ever going to do any of that from Northwest Missouri as a kid? And then that shaped some of the things that I participate in over time. So, you know, for example, this is from Tasmania, a Tasmanian devil. That's what they really look like when they're not a cartoon. And they have all kinds of skin cancer issues, and so they're dying because of the hole in the ozone. Anyway, so they have a whole story. And so there is an entire nonprofit that's what they do, is save the Tasmanian devil. And so we would go take pictures, we would go follow them, we would sit with biologists and try to understand how we could improve their lives. How can we do this? We would have, you know, treatments just like you would for humans, trying to figure it out. So it was interesting how it was sponsored. Now, of course, it's a big deal if you're in the state of Tasmania. Anyways. And the elephant, I think, is back from Kruger, if not somewhere else in Africa.
Here we go.
So I watched a lot of people and decided, you know, basically, I want to do less, you know, I want to need less, but give more. And how do I want to do that? Well, I want to do that in this style that I like, by telling people stories from a different perspective, maybe from mine, maybe from theirs. I hung up with a lot of artists my whole life. And long story short, I did a lot. Even as a kid, I'd sit there with my grandfather and he'd tell me about Vietnam, and I would remember all the stories. I still remember them. And so I just have kept doing that the whole time. My dad, the psychologist, was like, well, this isn't probably the best behavior for my child to do. But to me, it was fascinating. And it allows you then to go and write a memoir or take pictures or understand their perspectives. Like, it's awesome, like all the flags in Georgetown, the 2000 flags that the Rotary Club puts out. I could stay there forever and hear the stories of the military guys. I love to go out there and watch the kids learn all that, because on the days that aren't just like public days, they will have people come in and tell their story, you know, just like the Williamson County Museum does for historical things. And those kinds of things, that's what I'm interested in capturing from a history perspective, and so that we don't repeat those things. So, all right. So basically, stories anywhere. I did a lot of photography when I was, well, until this picture was taken. This was literally the Tuesday before 9/11, and I was in the World Trade Center the Tuesday before. And those were all black and white 50 ASA Ilford film. I hadn't done digital at all at that point. I still did a dark room and all the old school stuff. And it took 3 years to develop the negatives, develop the stuff, and then I eventually auctioned it off. But it was a turning point. And then I went and I still traveled for work, but it wasn't so much. In the village down in Guatemala, we did things as simple as, how do we learn how to brush our teeth? Because they'd never seen a toothbrush. And we worked with the village dentist. So it was interesting, but it was a very different perspective. And so all this really comes down to understanding somebody else's perspective so that you can be empathetic and to help other people that aren't empathetic towards that cause. That's the hard part, especially right now. We're too divided. People have to come back together and have this concept of community. And so I've spent lots of time understanding what that community looks like. And it's really, really interesting. And a lot of the communities around here, because this area is growing so quickly, are really interesting because it's so different. So I've lived in Georgetown for 26 years. Georgetown had, I don't know, not very many people. It was mainly a farming community when I moved there. And today, Georgetown's huge, right? I mean, there was always Sun City, but those people are really transplants from all over. But it's really changed. If you go to the square today, you will see an international conglomerate of people. You will see people from New York. You'll see people from LA that have come to Georgetown to hang out. And it's really interesting because even 3 or 4 years ago, we didn't see that on a regular basis. So my photography group, we hang out on the square. Sometimes we go there 3 or 4 times a week. And so we're really observant. We have a lot of people that do street photography. And it's all about how that works. And for me, I'm trying to figure out how all the pieces fit together by talking to people, by understanding the different cultures, figuring out how that works. And I've been able to basically continue the global part of my storytelling without ever leaving Georgetown, because there's so many people from different places.
Is your photography group, is it a formal group or is it a bunch of people that hang out? You say you go to the.
It is a formal group. It is, Clay mentioned it, it is the Texas Photography Festival group, which is a free festival one Saturday in March, formed by David Valdez, who was the head of Disney photography and presidential photographer for Bush Sr. He lives out in Sun City. But we do once a month, we do photo walks. They're also free. But there's lots of people that just come all the time. Like we go to the square, like people go to the, like I went to the mall as a child, like all the time. Like I don't even call them. I can be guaranteed that there'll be 2 or 3 of them there because that's just the way it is every evening. Like we go take walks and get our exercise in and take pictures and try to see what's going on and what the next thing is coming on the square. And half the time the photographers volunteer and do for the greater good on both sides. And there's all kinds of overlap between the nonprofits in Georgetown, the photographers in Georgetown, and all the community as a whole. In fact, I grew a beard because the Beard Club kind of orchestrated putting all the nonprofits of Georgetown together. And because I work for nonprofits, I was like, that's really cool that somebody would do that on a grassroots local level. Leave it to a bunch of guys with a beard that, you know, some of them some people would be scared to see in an alley. And they're like the nicest guys ever. And it's like, okay, how did this happen? And so what is the story of the organization? Well, they wanted to clean up the trash on the square at 8 in the morning in the rain on a Saturday. You know, and they have a good time doing it. I mean, they dress up in, they've even dressed up like in inmate jumpsuits to do it, just to see what the community would do. So you tie some character like that and you try to follow them with a camera. Yeah, and the end of the Saturday, picking up trash could be fun by 10 in the morning. So that's the idea. So a lot of it comes down to technology, understanding how these different things happen. So another thing I'm totally fascinated with is music and how all those pieces fit together, what the base of music is and how people react to it. And like, if you've got people that have mental health issues or like at a warming shelter, the #1 way to get everybody calm was to have a band come. The #2 way is probably food. And so hope there's not a gas leak. What happened when I was trying to cook the stuff from bless the little Georgetown ISD kids and the culinary program that put together the food for the kids, or for the kids, for the kids that put together the food for the people in the warming shelter, because those things like have to go like clockwork, because if they don't, people are used to schedules like everybody is, right? And it just gets really rough. But anyways, things like music will calm people down almost instantly. In fact, This lady here had all kinds of liver sclerosis and issues, and she's passed away since this. And literally the guy sitting next to her was literally, never met her before, was sitting there being her caretaker that entire 2 or 3 days. It was really interesting. And they were open about it. I mean, it was the way it was. It was the way that they survive on the street is basically the way they said it to me. So it was interesting. And so those are the kinds of things I try to understand further. I try to put into pictures, try to get the feel of that. Obviously, in certain cases, for privacy reasons, that's why it's from the back, right? So, you know, you should definitely always ask if it's this kind of situation. But 3/4 of them still were like, yeah, take my picture. I had illegal immigrants that said, take my picture. They were so grateful for a place that was warm. We had one guy, Francisco, bless his heart, he sat there and literally cleaned with a broom for 3 days. We couldn't even kick him out of the shelter because the church needed to use it during the day towards the end of the ice crisis. And everybody got so stir crazy that we wanted them to leave for 3 or 4 hours in the middle of the day. He wouldn't leave. He would sit there and clean the floor the entire time. And this is a 60-year-old gentleman that's lived on the streets, I don't know how long. And I mean, they brought him, you know, the doctor that checked him out told me that he was within 15 minutes of death when he came. So it was good that we were there. But he was so deeply embedded, never seen him since. And most of the people, I'm around them enough in Georgetown that I normally know where they are and I can find them. Nope, I will never see him again, I suspect. So it's interesting to see how that works. There are people, especially like the scary things are what the definition is. I mean, to get help in Williamson County for free, if you have mental health issues, you have to be having hallucinations. That's the definition. And you get one chance. And if you don't stay for the 24 hours, you never get to go back. That's how poor the services are. So anyways, it's interesting. And I've had people check themselves out 2 hours before the deadline. It is hard. And there's some people that it changes so variably that they'll be fine one day and the next day there's other things going on. And so you have to understand the whole story when you're doing these things or when you're taking their pictures. In fact, one of these guys, he allowed us to sit there at our photo festival in Georgetown. And we actually, one of our photo tours was the police chief of San Antonio, who's also a photographer. And so he was there giving his photo talk. And I was there, and Joe, another one of my friends, we both know James really well. And he was having an extraordinarily good day. We could tell it straight off. And we're like, hey, do you want to pose for all of us? He might have gotten his picture taken 1,000 times. I mean, there was probably, 150 people in the group. and it like made he still talks about it when I see him. So it's interesting. And so the way I try to do things is I think of it actually as a music track. So, you know, I take each track individually and try to then put them in one image. So it's not so much like technical photography. I can do that. If you want to talk about, you know, shutter speed and all the fun stuff, you can. But it's more, what are the elements of the photo that I want there or I don't want there? Can I get them out in camera? Like I'll try to get a trash can out in camera instead of coming in back and doing it in post-production. And so things like that, to me, are a fun challenge. I also like shooting prime lenses, just for challenge, or all manual lenses. That's hard in events. So I'll use a zoom lens for that. But for other things, I find it way more rewarding than the photography technical elements to be a lot stronger with a prime lens, or maybe even a lens like a lens baby lens that intentionally doesn't give you the clearest picture because it will tell the story better than a perfectly clear L Canon lens, or if you're a Nikon, the equivalent. So it's all about creating an understanding and trying to create an environment where somebody's really excited about what you've created. So in this case, this is actually the most recent Habitat homeowner. There's a family and then her. And this is her video at Hops for Habitat, or Hops for Houses, I think is what they call it. It was in Round Rock at the rec center. And that's another photo buddy in my photo group. And he's a videographer more than he does photography too. His name's Rudy. And he's a lot of fun, but he got more excited. And then he would get excited. And it was really funny to watch the two of them together and to see the story retold, because she'd never seen the video before. And so this was like the revealing of it. And so it was interesting. And so stories of stories, or art of art, those kinds of things I like. And I think it's fascinating to see, what the understanding is, and then talk about it and say, hey, does this match up? Or what was your perspective? What did you like or not? And so like one of the things I've found is like, if you can describe a smell in a photo, people will go crazy. Just like if you do it in writing. Because that's a sense that most people don't usually get in a photo. So I definitely am kind of into the psychology of it all too. And if people can see humanity in a different way, that's my challenge, is to typically get somebody that wouldn't normally stop to look at a photo, for the photo to be dramatic enough to get them to stop scrolling, right? So that becomes the goal, or for the words to be enough to get that same thing done. So the idea is to do all that, of course, with dignity and to bring all these things together. So the thing I think that's the coolest about the art community is everybody, regardless if you're dealing with musicians or you're dealing with hardcore fine artists, whether they be pencil artists or photographers, I found it doesn't really matter. People want to do like this improv collaboration thing. And they want to learn from each other. And so groups like this are really cool, because you can learn all kinds of different things that maybe you didn't think of. Like one day you're learning technical specs, the next day you're learning storytelling, the next day you're learning something else. And so I find that fascinating, because then you can make a better photo, you can look at better stories, and I definitely am in, the earlier question about, do you do like photo documentaries? A lot of the people I hang out with have had newspaper careers. And so absolutely, I do like to document things for organizations, because that helps them. So things like, the groundbreaking at Habitat, I'll go do that. Things that are story-based. I mean, like this one's pretty obvious, right? So they literally write messages to the homeowner and put it in the studs in their attic at Habitat. Habitat's been doing that for at least 20 years, long time. And that's me, and that's the head of Habitat Williamson County. Anyway, so in closing, it's just something to be human. To me, it's almost dubs as therapy and trying to figure out how things work. So it's all part of my curiosity and how these pieces work together, and trying to understand people from their perspective, not just mine. So it's not necessarily to sit down and solve a problem. Sometimes it can be. Like if I'm doing fundraising photography, I know exactly what the specs would be specifically to do fundraising photography to bring in donations, because I've worked that business area. I never thought that I would ever want to do anything that was marketing based, because that's just totally not me. But once you see the dollars come in and you see the change that it does, yeah, okay, maybe. And so my number one thing with having photography is to have a good time. And this is literally our picture from Saturday of the Georgetown group. And yeah, David Valdez is literally giving me bunny ears. I was the Easter Bunny in Georgetown on the square, literally in a suit. I'm sure everyone had a fun time. They all took pictures of me, the entire photo group there, probably, almost. So it was fine. It was fun, actually. But I try not to be too serious, because by definition, pretty serious guy. So I try to make things a little more fun for myself. And I found that, that's something that we can all do for each other. Why do photography if you don't enjoy it, right? So like, I'm not going to sit down and edit pictures until I'm nervous to make it pixel perfect. To me, it's more about the story. Most people won't even notice that pixel, is what I've learned. So anyways, questions?
So, Ian, thanks for sharing so much of your personal involvement. So I take it that you work a lot with the homeless, and you've been doing that as part of your being a member of the community, and the photography comes along. How about, is it possible to go to a nonprofit and say, I'd like to help you with photography? How do you approach? Have
that's
you
a good
done that?
question.
And is it
I have
something?
done that.
Uh-huh. How does it work?
Most of them, if you went and said, hey, I would like to, I would go to their Facebook page or wherever, find an event and say, hey, would you like somebody, do you have a photographer that does this? Some organizations will have a professional, most won't. They just simply don't have the budget. For those that don't, join in. Usually the more the merrier is the other thing I found. It's pretty common for David or Rudy and I to go out and take pictures, or one of us will do pictures, one of us will do video for the same organization. Sometimes it's on a volunteer basis. Sometimes we get paid. Just depends on the organization and what their funds are. I'm doing this primarily on the side. I've got I do nonprofit strategic roadmaps for executives on the side. So to me, where it also gets fun is but this is beyond photography. Like it's like homeless, for example, I implemented Salvation Army in 8 or 9 countries and all their software. I've done Boys and Girls Club. I don't even know how many clubs, hundreds. And so like, the interesting thing is even large nonprofits, they'll run things totally differently. Like if you go to Holland, to the headquarters of, go to the headquarters there of Salvation Army in Amsterdam, it's nothing like what the Salvation Army looks like in New York City. They're totally separate organizations. And it's the same thing with lots of nonprofits. And so, yeah, you really just have to ask and start to understand their culture. I mean, like Boys and Girls Club, the only thing they ever had in common was they checked kids in and out, of course. But I mean, what they did and how they did it and how they achieved it was up to the local club. But they all do fundraising together. This is more efficient.
Questions? More questions? Who's got the mic in the front row? Okay, go ahead. Ask a question, Mary. So, are there some formal requirements, such as people have to sign a waiver, that sort of thing? Do you find that helpful?
On the organization at Helping Hands, when somebody comes in the warming shelter, for example, we do actually ask them that. It is on the intake form, also for the volunteers. There's very few people, though. I mean, we had one guy that he was a news anchor for San Francisco before he was homeless, and he said no, because he was well known.
And would you say a little bit more about where you put your photos, like Instagram, Facebook,
Yeah,
and the choice of
Facebook, Instagram, usually community groups, and of course the website of the organizations, right? Annual reports of the organizations is pretty typical. A lot of times, organizations will do like old days calendars to raise money or stuff like that. Now it's becoming more common that they'll use storytelling to further their cause, and it's becoming a lot more common that it be videos, honestly, than still pictures. Like, I mean, for example, Rethink for Mental Health in the UK, I worked with them and we produced videos, you know, with the prints literally on mental health. And so they would, or they would go get a celebrity to do those kinds of things. And so, you know, it would be those kinds of, the other things I've done is like, I've gotten teenagers and senior citizens together, for example, so that they could give each other direction and advice, and then videoed it on specific topics. And so that's a big thing, like in Australia and the UK. I think they all have TV shows like that. We watch all this reality TV. It'll be you know, that's their TV show. They'll get them together. It's very interesting because they have things in common and they bond, and like, so you'll see the teenager like learn how to read a map, and the teenager will teach the older person how to use a GPS. And so at the end, they're both better.
Okay, so if you are just volunteering and taking pictures for some local group, then do you end up just like processing those pictures and then giving them an album online of here's all these pictures, use them how you want? Is that
it depends on what they want. I have some that all they want, they don't even want high resolution ones, and they're not paying me for their time, they don't care. We'll text them. I mean, most, like if they want them for the annual report, yeah, I'm going to put them out there on a drive or a share and let them download them all.
okay? Because I'm assuming you're taking quite a few pictures and then decide which ones they want to.
Right, and I don't usually, I don't do a lot of post processing per se, unless if it's paid, I will. But obviously, but if it's not paid, most of the time that's just, unless it's something, or like if it's going to go on an annual report, maybe, or if it's for a big fundraising campaign, maybe. But in general, yeah, I'll give them, you know, medium of the road images just right out of my Lightroom. I don't give people digital negatives usually. Most people don't know how to handle them anyways.
Awesome work. You said you mentioned, but you didn't talk about it. You mentioned that you had done some work in Nepal. Can you say a word about that?
Yeah. So I have some friends that are from Nepal. She's a professional writer, and he's also a professional photographer. And they know the Prime Minister of Nepal, who's the first woman Prime Minister of Nepal. And I write the Western perspective. She writes in Sanskrit, their perspective. And it's literally like feminism, women's rights, like Western culture exposed there, for example. So it exposes them to Western culture and the changes that come from globalization, basically. And so it's interesting. Of course, her husband really supports all this, and he's an awesome portrait photographer. And so he'll take these pictures that are just like just blow your mind, of different festivals, or even like workout photos of people from Nepal at different places in Austin. And it literally is then used over there on the other side and published. And so it's interesting. And then you get interesting results. And so it is government supported, not American government supported, but by the Nepalese government. Yeah. But you have to kind of know people or have been there. Like some of these other communities, I definitely do those kinds of things. I know people that do it on what was the DMZ in Korea and stuff like that.
Does it help to have someone guide you,
Absolutely.
take you places and introduce you to the people, even if they're.
If you don't know, yeah, absolutely. Especially if safety is a factor, you absolutely want to know somebody. Otherwise, it can be pretty adventuresome. I mean, and the other thing is safety changes over time. It is not static at all. I mean, I used to go up to that village in Guatemala, no problem, 20 years ago. Today, with all the cartels and stuff, yeah, it's an adventure. I'll tell you, I know people that live here that are from that village that haven't been home for 20 years because it's that dangerous. Last time with a rental car, it was not so successful. Probably safer than riding a chicken bus, which is an old US school bus that literally probably has people riding with chickens on it, where it's not unusual to see a 2 or 3 year old sat on in the rear seat by 8 adults. And you can't help them either. Yeah, they get you in trouble. It's interesting. So you have to know the culture. And of course, if you're just starting, you wouldn't. And you also, of course, languages become important at that point. But yeah, you definitely have to be careful. And in every little place is different. I mean, it's just like DC, right? You can go across the street, or even here in Round Rock or Austin, it doesn't matter. You can change in 2 blocks.
Okay. Last call. I think we can hear the thunder in the
I'm sure
background, and we know the thunderstorm is still coming in to Austin. And Ian, you look like you've kind of dried out a little bit.
Time
Yeah,
to
we can get out
again.
there, everybody. So appreciate all of you being here tonight. And Ian, thank you for being our guest speaker. Right. Well, our next, Pat is here, and I believe you want to come say something about June. Is it Gary Hook? Talking about our next program in June.
Yeah, our next speaker is going to be Gary Hook, and Gary is not talking in June. Gary is talking in July. It's Roy from Austin PPA will be speaking on what makes a good photograph. And so it's just a conceptual thing. It's not going to be a technical presentation. I hope everyone would be here for that one, to have someone that is just going to talk about the concept, and you have this idea, and how do you make the idea become an image that fulfills the idea itself. So that'll be a month from today, basically. And what, 2.5, 3 weeks, we have competition night. So, and then in July, yes, Gary is going to be speaking in July, and he's going to be talking about some technical aspects of something really, it sounds simple, but if you're not aware of how to do it, it's dodging and burning and doing manipulations in Lightroom and in Photoshop. So mostly in Lightroom though. So we'll have a technical talk that time. So that should about do it for the summer. Yeah, until we get to August. So yeah, hope everybody can make it. In the meantime, hope you have a great time with the time off, you know. So.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for being attending, and we'll look forward to you in June. Thank you, Ian, once again.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.